Hello everyone out there. Oh, sorry, bug in my face. I have been wanting to make a video now for a couple days, but obviously I'm like awkward and weird and been scared and nervous about what I was gonna say. I'm running out of time now to procrastinate, so I'm gonna wing it pretty much. Story of my life. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cody. I am 31 years old. I am the mother of 3. I have a 10-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter, as well as a 7-month-old daughter. What I wanted to discuss today is something that is very near and dear to my heart and something I'm sort of really passionate about. For those of you who do know me, this might not come as a surprise. First of all, I sort of wanted to openly discuss some stigmas out there that people have when it comes to mental, personality, or even behavioral disorders. The stigmas that go along with something like that, I believe, are ridiculous, and it's time for it to stop. Nobody should feel shame for having something that they can't control. I wrote something sort of to start this video out just as a way to kind of, I don't know, gather my thoughts, since that's something I struggle with. But I wanted to read it before I got into my story. Stigma, the Scarlet Letter of Mental, Personality, and Behavioral Disorders is how I titled it. Stigmas, by definition, according to Merriam-Webster, are classified as a mark of shame or discredit. So, it makes perfect sense why there are millions of Americans out there struggling with undiagnosed disorders, because they are personally probably afraid to admit they might have something, but they're also very ashamed already and scared about what other people are going to think. Statistically speaking, I do believe it's about 26% of Americans are walking around this crazy world with an undiagnosed mental, personality, or behavioral disorder, and that comes down to roughly about 1 in 4. So as to why there are still stigmas about something as common as a disorder like that is, to me, just almost unthinkable. Everybody knows somebody or is not currently personally dealing with a disorder like the ones I'm referring to, and why is it so secret, and why is there so much shame tied to admitting that you struggle with something as common as depression or anxiety, bipolar? Those are the 3 most common, I do believe, mental disorders. But also with ADHD and ADD, there are some personality disorders too that I feel like are super common. Borderline personality disorder is one. There's anti-personality disorder. There's so many different spectrums to these. As to why people are still uncomfortable with admitting that they struggle, or even, wanting to tell their employer that they struggle with something like that, is just beyond me. Nobody should feel shame for coming out and having the courage to discuss what they struggle with. And if you find yourself in a relationship or around people who are not understanding or ignorant to the fact that you do think a little bit differently than others, I would suggest that it's no longer a problem with you, it's a problem with that individual. And you need to run for the hills and surround yourself with people who understand and are willing to learn about your specific diagnosis. Sorry, I had to write stuff down because, as you can probably and will tell through this video, I have a hard time with keeping focus and getting my thoughts in order. But that's kind of where I stand when it comes to us as a society. We need to stop making people feel guilt over something that they cannot control. I know for a fact I am really sick of carrying around this extra weight of keeping sort of what I would consider a secret when it comes to me and sometimes the way I behave. And I feel like once I get it out, I no longer will be chained to these super common, for starters, but also very treatable disorders. Um, that's one thing I find that people are uneducated about, and sometimes when you're uneducated, that turns into ignorance. And if people are just made aware, then hopefully we can make some changes and stop the shaming of somebody who struggles. Um, See, I already forgot where I was going with that point. That is one of the things that I personally struggle with. So let me see if I can get my thoughts back here. I guess I'll just go back to, like, I really do find it not okay that with all the technology and, I don't know, access we have to things like the internet where we can get really good, useful, correct information, that there are still people out there that don't understand, and there are still people in positions of high power that don't understand. And I don't know, it should just stop. You should just be able to openly talk to somebody about something you struggle with, and hopefully that person has the education enough to try and be compassionate and empathetic and understanding to what you are trying to explain you're going through. When it comes to educating yourselves on different types of disorders, there are probably, I don't know how many, I didn't count, but there's 3 specific groups where you can fall into if you have something. And the first one is mental. I did touch on that. That would be like your depressions and anxiety and bipolar disorders, as well as the behavioral ones, which are your ADD and ADHD, and as well as this other one, it's called ODD, which it's like it's a defiancy disorder where you, for some reason, can't draw the line between right and wrong. There are also personality disorders like borderline personality, which no, it's not like somebody who one second is Patricia and then the next minute Tom. Like that's not what that means. People with borderline personality disorders can struggle with issues like abandonment, and they can struggle with just regulating their own personality, for lack of a better term. Having one of these disorders really does put you at a higher chance and risk of having 2 or more. So typically, if you're diagnosed with one disorder, you also have another, which, has this whole nother set of symptoms and all that stuff. When you have a disorder, I just want to make it clear, and I'll say it louder for the people in the back. If you have a disorder, you are not disabled. You are fully capable of living a normal, productive life. All you need to do is become aware, accept the fact that you struggle with not an addiction, but kind of the same thing, with a disorder, and then getting the help, I guess, that you need first and foremost. It's very hard. I don't know, it's one of the hardest things I've kind of ever experienced in my life, and I am just recently have reached out to a doctor and am currently medicating for some of the disorders that I suffer from. And that decision was a long time coming. It didn't happen overnight. It took years and years and years of me knowing I'm different, accepting that I'm different, admitting to myself that I'm different, and then finally having the courage to go to a professional who indeed, surprise, surprise, after hours of testing, I feel like, decided that I definitely do have some disorders that need attention, and it's something I just couldn't do on my own. I just couldn't, mentally, physically, or emotionally. when it comes to making the decision to finally go get medicated, I want to address the stigmas upon that as well, because I know I've run into, when I'm being open and honest about what I'm going through and how I'm dealing with it, people aren't very receptive to the fact that I am on a medication that is classified as I forget what it's classified as, but a controlled substance, I suppose. And the guilt and the looks and the comments I've got just from that alone as well have been very disheartening and very just all in all negative. And I'm not quite sure why, because I finally, for the first time, decided that it was time for me to go get help, went and got the help, but now I'm also feeling shame and discredited because I'm on a medication that some people would consider to be, not good. That they might be right. It might personally not be good for them, but they can't speak for me. I also know that before I was diagnosed with my disorders, that I did suppress a lot of my sadness and emotional impulsive tendencies with lots of alcohol abuse. And that honestly to me has been the hardest one to admit to myself, that I indeed and still struggle with alcohol. I'm not a perfect person. I am aware that I am fighting a war, and I definitely am aware that I lose some battles. It's okay to lose some battles, and all I know is I'm still fighting in my own personal war. I don't want to give up on seeking treatment and finding ways to live with the disorders I personally have, and I don't want anybody to feel like they should either, or feel uncomfortable expressing that their brains are wired just a little bit differently. That's not something that, when you already struggle, is something to easily cope with. And that's another thing I know I personally have issues with, is finding healthy ways to cope with lots of emotions, and some of them I can't even explain. If you haven't been able to tell already, I will kind of go into a little more depth about what I personally struggle with, since that's the only thing I can relate to. I have been diagnosed with adult ADHD as well as borderline personality disorder. They each carry kind of their own different quirks, if that's what you want to call them. That's what I call them. And everybody deals with, even maybe someone with ADHD outside of myself probably deals and struggles with other symptoms. For me, it's definitely a struggle to keep any kind of solid relationship with people. It's a struggle for me to keep my thoughts in line, and it's a struggle for me to organize. It's a struggle for me to not lose my car keys, my cell phone, and I'm not talking about just occasionally doing it. We're talking about every time I touch something, I will lose it. It's caused a lot of frustration in my relationship with